Welcome to the Think Factory podcast. We got one question for you. What keeps you up at night?
Hello, welcome to the Think Factory podcast, powered by OGC Solutions. My name is Paul Salvatoriello, counsel with OGC Solutions, and I'm your host of today's episode. On today's show, we will be delving back into the world of electricity and protecting your electric products and appliances, particularly manufacturing in New Jersey, with Zero Surge Incorporated, an industry leader in the manufacturing of premium quality American-made surge protectors, and award winner from Hunterdon County for helping Hack Hunterdon succeed, which was a technology group / computing competition. And I am very excited to bring to the podcast today Jim Minadeo, the president and owner of Zero Surge Incorporated. So, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me. It's fun to be here. We've had a great conversation already. We'll hope to continue it here with everybody listening to us.
Totally. Yeah, Jim and I have had such a phenomenal conversation. I wish the audience could have heard all the stuff that we covered. I think we solved all the problems of the world.
Yes.
But it's great to have you here, Jim, live in studio. Now, my firm learned a little bit about Zero Surge and its story as a few of our colleagues from the New Jersey Manufacturing Extension Program, the NJMEP. We just had to, so after meeting you there, we just had to invite you to the Think Factory to learn more firsthand. So, Jim,
yes.
Let's start at the beginning of Zero Surge's rich history.
Okay, so we were founded in 1989 by Rudy Harford. He's a former engineer from RCA, back when, RCA television was the big.
Sure.
So he worked at the famous Sarnoff Research Center in Princeton. He had like 30 patents in color television. I would say it's like partly the reason we have color television because of Rudy. Mm-hmm. And so he was actually retiring and he was consulting for Samsung, and they were having issues with printers failing in their computer network. And so he started figuring out the reason is because of surge damage. And because of the way traditional surge protectors work, they were diverting the problem instead of solving the problem. They were sending it to the ground line, which is shared by the network. And that's the back door into the printer because it was going through the network line, not through the power. Mm-hmm. So he came up with a better way of doing surge protection and started manufacturing them in his barn and then moved into us where we are today, which is we're sitting in a converted chicken coop. That Rudy built himself with his partner.
That's amazing. And we're in Frenchtown.
We're in Kingwood Township.
Okay, Kingwood.
But the mailing address for Zero Surge is Frenchtown, which is a couple miles down the road.
Okay, and so we're in a converted chicken coop.
Yes,
love it.
Yeah, so
could not tell.
Right on Route 12.
Luxurious.
So you drive by, you'll see the blue chicken coop on Route 12. That's us. Mm-hmm. And so then Rudy was finally getting to the point where he wanted to sell Zero Surge. He wanted to retire finally. And so I met him actually trying to apply for a job here 12 years ago now. And he never ended up hiring anybody to run the company because he wanted to sell it instead. And I ran into him by trying to sell him components because I did get a job selling components. And I asked the simple question, like, how's business? And he said, well, I'm going to sell the business. And I said, well, how much?
Okay. And
it turned out it was a number that, made sense for what I thought the business was worth. And the only thing was getting the financing. And he said, well, I'll finance it.
Wow.
So he actually held the note on the sale.
Wow,
that's so convenient. The only caveats he wanted was we had to keep the business in Hunterdon County because he didn't want people to lose their jobs.
Okay.
And any big decisions, I had to run it by him as far as, do we need to move or do we need to add, a bunch of new equipment, or he wanted to make sure, his investment was protected. I wasn't going to run the place into the ground.
Right.
But he liked my background, and I'm a chemistry background, but, in the electronics world, different versions of electronics. And he actually liked that my wife also is a scientist and has patents. And so he'd looked them all up before we met. And I think he felt comfortable letting us be the stewards of the business.
Wow.
And so I'm still the sole owner, although my wife, I always call her the unofficial HR person to help with bouncing off those kind of decisions. And we have, the same people are still here. We have Our sales and marketing director is the same person for almost over 25 years now. Our office manager has been here more than 20 years. We have, people who've worked here 15 years plus.
That's great.
And so that's, trying to carry on that tradition.
Yeah, that must feel good to have such longevity and have such loyalty. Yes.
Yeah, and it was kind of weird. Like it was kind of like a startup and not a startup.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of when you take over a business in the middle of its history, you don't have to remarket from scratch.
Right,
you don't have to, we kept the name, everything's the same. So those things that a startup faces, I didn't have those challenges. Mm-hmm. Whereas the only challenge I had were the financial, because I'm starting with zero money. Right. So it's almost like being a startup. So so all the first few years was reinvesting money into the company.
Okay.
And Rudy would even tell you, he was never big on all the current modes of marketing.
Right.
So social media and
so you kind of,
and so we had to figure out, okay, where do we market? Mm-hmm. Those first few years, Donna and I were, Donna's the marketing and sales director, Donna DeVico. And, we spent a lot of time picking different trade shows to see, okay, can we have a foothold in this industry or that industry? Because when you sell a surge protector, we can be in all these industries, right? Because we protect computers, we protect AV equipment, we protect digital signs now, we protect military stuff. I mean, do you go after which, and then there's home consumer stuff.
And you do both?
So what we do is we looked at it by application for a while. We were doing that. And we just try to see where the low-hanging fruit was, who was grabbing onto it. Right. And so we had to find somebody who has the most pain, who doesn't care about the price point. Because that's the one aspect of our technology. If there is a negative of our technology, is just the price point is more. Yeah. Partly because we're making here in the U.S. is actually only a tiny part of that equation, but it's because of the physics of what we're doing is different than the traditional surge protectors, which their components cost, 5 to 10 cents in addition to the strip itself, whereas ours is, probably over $100 when you start adding up all the components. Because it's a lot of copper, it's a lot of material that go in there, because it really is a robust surge protector.
And tell me more about that. Now that we've talked, I'm worried about all of my components and appliances exploding. So there's that. So what's the difference between the one I get at Target or Walmart and what you're producing?
Okay, so every other surge protector works the same. So whether you're getting it at Walmart, Target, or at a high-end audio store and they're selling you the Furman or these other brands that are out there, they're all using what's called a metal oxide varistor, which is a little semiconductor. It's like a sandwich.
Right.
And what it does is that material is kind of unique in that if the voltage rises in a circuit, it changes its resistance. So imagine it's like a dam that can suddenly open because it sees the height of the water. Mm-hmm. It's all automatic, and it happens, very quickly, and within, less than a microsecond it happens. Mm-hmm. It can shift, and so what it does is it opens this gateway, and where it sends the energy is to the ground line. Okay, you have the line, the neutral, and the ground, and a regular outlet, right? Those are the three prongs, right? And so the ground line, though, is mostly for our safety, so we don't get electrocuted. Mm-hmm. It's really the reason it's there. The secondary reason you have a ground line is to have a reference for when you send a signal. So like in a network. Mm-hmm. So your cable lines, your network Ethernet lines, they need to have a reference 0 point in a building, and that's the ground line. The ground line is your 0 point. Mm-hmm. That's how we define it. And so if you're sending energy to that ground line, which is fine on a safety standpoint because that's where energy is supposed to go, so you don't get electrocuted. But if you're doing it regularly, because surges are happening all the time. When surges happen, you turn on and off a light switch, you create a surge. Okay. You're interrupting the flow of electricity. You're creating a surge.
But what if just something's running, it's plugged in, it's just running, like your refrigerator? Is there surges kind of happening through that line constantly?
So appliances, so I would get to that point at some point, but appliances don't need surge protection. It's really solid state, sensitive electronics like computers, cell phones, your TVs, alarm systems.
Okay.
Outside of those main things, you don't need surge protection because those are the devices that create surges. The motor in your refrigerator creates surges.
Gotcha.
Your vacuum cleaners, your heating irons, your coffee pots.
Okay.
Your anything with a big heating element or anything with a motor in it is creating a surge.
Okay.
And so that's really the source of surges in a building. 80% of surges originate from inside the building.
Okay. All right.
They actually don't come from the power company.
Right.
Most people think they come from lightning and power company. It's very rare. Even in Florida, it's rare.
Okay.
Relative to how much time. If you think about, even in Florida, if you have one thunderstorm a day and you had one lightning strike near you, that's one a day.
Right.
But you turn on and off your stuff all day long.
Right. So
So even though they're
your
not
slogan
high,
should be the surge is inside the house.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's your log line for your movie.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. It's coming from the refrigerator.
Right, exactly. There you go.
And so you really don't need to surge protect those devices.
Okay, because they're creating the surge. All right.
Yeah, because what kills
surges though were like unexpected, like an unexpected flow of electricity. It's not.
Well, it's really what it is. It's a noise. So if you think about what AC power is, it's oscillating at 60 hertz. So it's going up and down. It actually goes from minus 170 to positive 170 volts on a sine wave at 60 hertz. So every 160 oscillations a second. And so what a surge is, it's just like, if you have a whip and you make a whip action, you get this high frequency. So you get this wave that's running faster than 60 hertz. And so when you turn on and off a light switch, it's like creating a whip effect.
Okay.
When the motors are engaging and they suddenly take a lot of power all of a sudden, it causes this back ripple, like throwing a rock in a pond or something.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And so there's two aspects to that wave, and that's the height of the wave and the speed of the wave. So the height is your voltage and the speed is the current.
Okay.
Right? How fast it's running. And so today's electronics they're not really sensitive to changes in that voltage height. They're actually more sensitive to the speed of the wave.
Okay.
Things made after 1980 follow that because they're usually switch mode power supplies. Before 1980, most things were linear power supplies, which is the opposite. They're not sensitive to changes in current. They're sensitive to changes in voltage. And so if you have a device that that works on voltage, it works fine because that's the problem you're trying to prevent.
Right.
But when it shifted to the switch mode, we never shifted our surge protectors. We still haven't for most part, because most people don't use our product. Right. We're a little company.
Well, after this podcast, I think that. Hang on a second. We have to shift the paradigm. But yes, go ahead.
You're right under Joe Rogan.
I understand that's
popularity,
the case,
right?
I've been told.
Really close.
Right.
And so, the voltage change is not as big of a deal. Like if you think about what your TV is designed to run, it's Samsung or Sony makes your TV in one factory for the world, so they have to run 240 volts for Europe, 100 volts for Japan. We run 120. So it has a wide voltage capability, and so it's really those changes in current.
Okay.
And so the MOV can't see changes in current. It can only wait for voltage to happen. Sometimes you get both voltage and current together rising, but sometimes you just get current.
Okay.
The main time you get current just in rising is when you turn it on for the first time.
Right.
You get an inrush of current going into the TV power supply. It's still not, the voltage is going from 0 to 120.
Right.
But the current is speeding in there. And so every time you turn on something, you're actually damaging it to an extent. What they try to do is they use a temperature controlled resistor that puts a resistance when the TV's cold.
Right.
But if the TV is on for an hour and you turn it off and turn it back on, that resistor is still hot, so it doesn't protect it.
Interesting.
So it's and we've seen damage from that in a alarm system. We saw that in a hospital.
Oh, geez. And that can be serious.
They actually asked us to come and check out one of their boards because they kept failing they were failing randomly, which is surge usually are random, and it was failing when they would do a power test.
Okay.
So they had a big backup generator. So they had to, by rule, every month they would turn off the power.
Right.
The battery, the diesel generator would kick in. and they would do testing, and then they'd turn it back on the main power.
Mm-hmm.
Well, these alarm systems are always connected. They're never turned off.
Right.
So they were getting these boards to fail in the fire alarm systems randomly. And so, we actually looked at the boards and saw that it was damaging the power supply and deduced it was this inrush current because those boards are on all the time. So that temperature resistor that they're using is never going to work because it's always hot.
Right.
So it never got cold enough to resist that inrush of current when it first turned on. So, that's kind of a tip is never just turn on and off something to make it work. You'll definitely make it fail.
Oh, that's good to know. Wow. I think I've done that.
I know I've broken a printer that way as a kid.
That. There you go. So now, okay, just 30,000 foot. While I'm not sure. I think we got off track in terms of the difference between zero surge products versus your regular.
Yeah, we also have to tell the story like how it used to work.
Right.
And so how we do it differently is we look at the surge as a high frequency noise. Mm-hmm. So instead of 60 hertz, it could be 1,000 hertz. It could be 15,000 hertz. So it's running along really fast. And we don't care if that wave has a peak that's higher than 120 volt or lower. We just care that it's a high frequency. Mm-hmm. So what you can do to filter out those higher frequencies is you create a low pass filter, is what it's called. So we had all the low frequency pass through, which is 60 hertz and lower, which is not going to damage your equipment. And we filter out everything that's higher. Mm-hmm. And so the way you do that is use an inductor and a capacitive bank. So it's a setup where, and it's nothing like revolutionarily physics wise. We're not inventing, Rudy didn't invent anything. He just applied this to this problem because nobody ever really had done that before. Mm-hmm. And so because the inductor you need for that kind of energy that's coming through, it's not a lot of energy, but it's a lot of power. So it's a lot of energy very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. So you can't use a traditional inductor that's just a wire wrapped around a magnet. Those would saturate. So he has an air core inductor, it's called. So it's like a coil of copper that creates this magnetic field, and that's what slows down this energy. Okay. And then we can divert it off into capacitors. So instead of sending it to the ground line, what we do is we store it, and then we send it back out on the neutral line, back to the power company. So we're completing the circuit that way with that energy, but because we slowed it down and put it into a capacitor, we've made it much slower. Okay. Back out. We almost match it back to the 60 hertz. Okay. So we take something that's moving really fast, so, peel it away from the good stuff,
slow it down,
suppress it, and then send it back out.
So the difference between, help me, for someone who doesn't know anything about electronics or electricity, the difference between sending or diverting to the ground line versus your process. Because ours is going on the neutral, it's just going back to the power company. So it's just completing the circuit. If you send it to the ground line, you have pieces of equipment that are tapped into the ground line. So they could be damaged.
And they could be damaged because they're not even going through their power supply. So even if you have a surge protector on your cable modem, it's only protecting the power. It's not protecting the network. Okay. So but the network's connected to the ground as well as the power. Mm-hmm. So that both power and network in a building is connected to the same ground line. Okay. So they share it. And so if you raise the potential of that ground line, you've created potential to push energy back into the data line because there's no protection on it. Right. Okay. So then what these other brands will do is they'll sell you network protection. Mm-hmm. And the reason they're doing it is because they're protecting you from themselves. Right, because they're the ones send it to the ground line. Right, there are no surges by definition on a ground line. If you just checked every ground line in your house and you had no surge protectors, and you still had your refrigerator and hair dryer and stuff, you would not see any surges on the ground line because they don't exist. But the surge on the data line, because data line is a DC circuit anyway. Okay, so there's no surges on a DC. It's by definition, it's an AC problem because it's a vibration. Right.
But you're saying that the cheaper surge protectors create that problem for the ground line.
Right.
They put surges in there that shouldn't be there. Right. And your surge protector doesn't do that at all. Right. It doesn't hurt the ground line at all. Right. It diverts it to this.
No, in fact, if you're in an old house that has no ground line, we still would work. Okay. Because we don't use the ground line.
And surge protectors that are cheaper wouldn't work?
They can't. They can't work because they need the ground line to send the energy. Because if they don't, they'll catch fire because
Right.
the energy will just sit in the surge protector.
Oh, geez. Okay.
And that there's reports of that happening. I mean, that's like when people have their power out and they want to run a generator. Well, generators are really noisy, so you're going to get a lot of surges just from a generator. Right. And there was I remember specifically a fire in Detroit where somebody with, a long power outage, he wanted to watch some movies, plugs in his generator, but the surge protector was plugged into the TV. And it was trying to send surges to the ground line that wasn't there. Yeah. So the heat built up in the surge protector and it caught fire. Oof. And he fell asleep watching the movie.
Oh, boy.
But luckily, his dog woke him up, and that was why it made the news, because the dog saved him
interesting.
from this fire.
Wow.
And I just remember the news commentator going, I didn't know you're not supposed to plug a surge protector into a generator with no ground line. It's like, because nobody knows these things. You don't get these.
Yeah. So do you have any penetration in the residential market? Or
yeah, we do.
Are you mostly doing...
So especially in this, if you don't have a ground line, people find us that way because we're the only surge protector that works without a ground. So when you Google that, you'll find us. Right. We do have a following in like the audio files. So the guys that have the big stereos, big TVs, home theaters, they found out about us. And so, we have good reputation in the forums, and that's how they usually communicate. So that we do have, I would say about 20% of our business is consumer, roughly, and then maybe the other 20% is direct to a business, like a law firm or something like you guys, or whatever you want to protect. Especially like your little, if you host your own server, things that are mission critical, that would be important, or your networking, because now everything's in the cloud, so you don't really need to protect. I mean, the cost of protecting a computer may be not a big deal, but you do want to protect the network, because then you can't get in the cloud if you have no network.
Exactly.
And the rest of our business is about a third of it is we call OEM sales. So we sell the guts of our product, and then somebody's incorporating that into their product. Oh, okay. So like one of the biggest ones is there's a company in Chicago that makes the digital signs. So like the drive-through for like Wendy's or Taco Bell, those kind of places. And now they're all video screens, and so they use our guts to protect the power. They have like a little power box that feeds power to all those TVs. Okay. Because those are expensive. I mean, the drive-through menu is on the order of like 30 to 40 grand just for the hardware.
And surges can hurt those as well.
Oh,
so
yes.
They want to protect them.
Because in if you think about a fast food restaurant, what is it? It's a very small building with a bunch of things cycling on and off. A lot of air conditioning, refrigerators, fryers, all these things. And then they have the cheapest, most sensitive devices called cash registers. Right. They're cash, a point of sale system is literally one of the cheapest computers you're going to buy. Oh, actually, because it's a very competitive market. Right. So you're going to have the simplest computer, because it doesn't need to do everything other than to do cash transactions, right? So they're going to give you the cheapest, the wimpiest power supply. Right. And
now, is there any way to have the guts of your surge protector help make the sound quality on a drive-through better?
Well, I mean, the audiophiles do claim that our product does filter the RF noise. But,
nice. So
but a lot of that stuff is beyond your hearing. So I don't know if it's, it's all anecdotal. We'll never claim officially that we make the sound better.
Right. But it would be great if you could.
But we do reduce, technically MOVs, when they do engage, they create an audible noise in a circuit. So
you said MOV.
Metal oxide varistors.
Okay, there you go. Right? Okay.
So the component in the traditional circuit protectors. Right. They actually do induce audible noise into a system.
Nice. All right.
So they can. So maybe it's more addition by subtraction.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. That's not so bad. I was kidding, but
no, that's true.
You see, now I want to be able to order my big.
And then the rest of our business is probably installers.
Okay.
So we do have a lot of IT companies that will use us because they can offer more, because they can know their products, like the computers are not going to get damaged. Right. They can offer a cheaper service plan because they know they don't have to visit. It's all software issues. It's not hardware.
Gotcha.
And then there are some issues. The other thing with the surges, they actually can cause computer lockups with software too. Right. So some random, because it slows down the internet, it can do all these things that are random, electrical effects. So
interesting. So all right now,
and then one last thing, because I know I'm forgetting, is so the main other difference is our product never wears out.
Really?
So our product is using magnetics,
Mm-hmm.
which has no wear properties. Magnet doesn't change. It just is there.
Yeah,
So it's a passive thing that's in the system.
Right.
So it'll never wear out. It'll actually outlive you and me.
Isn't that bad though for
you
don't you want to make
follow-on
planned
sales?
obsolescence?
But
Yes.
see what happens. So regular surge protectors wear out in 1 to 2 years.
Okay.
But people don't replace them.
No.
Because they don't stop working. Just the surge part stops working.
Oh, really?
Because the surge part's in parallel.
Wow.
You'll never know unless you look under your desk and see that red light's out.
Right.
That says I'm protected.
Interesting.
I was at my optometrist office one day, and I had to wait for something. So I'm looking down on the floor, and there's a cheap surge protector.
Right.
And you can see the light that says protected was gone. And I said to him, "How long has this light been out?" He's like, "I don't know."
Of course not.
Because he doesn't, they don't look down there. They don't know what it means.
This is a real good.
So I said, "This thing's not even
PSA
protecting your
for
equipment."
a lot of people. Yeah. All right. Wow. Because I think I have one that, like the on button's on,
Yeah.
but it's not lit up anymore.
Yeah, that's what it is. Or the other way, if you take one, unplug it, and you shake it, and if you hear what sounds like sand inside of it, that's that MOV. It broke apart.
Wow.
Because it has 2 modes of failure. It'll either break apart,
right,
or it'll fuse together. And if it fuses together, that's bad because it gets hot.
Yeah. Huh. Now I'm nervous. Now I got to go home quick and check my stuff. So, all right. Now talking about the business itself.
Yeah.
The business was incorporated in 1989 by Rudy. But when did you buy it?
2014.
Oh, okay. So
it's been
11 years ago.
11 years.
11 years.
January 1st.
All right. Congrats. All right. So, on starting the new year. Now, what would you say are one of the 2 key drivers to your company's longstanding success? Because it's been around since '89.
Yeah.
You've been running it since for the last 11 years.
Yeah. I think part of it is we have a very robust design. Mm-hmm. So Rudy has all the credit to Rudy's design that we don't have to change it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the same basic design. I mean, it changed a little bit in his early years. I mean, he used to actually wind the inductors here around like a PVC pipe and real handmade kind of stuff.
Right.
And as we got it all kind of more automated and a little bit more up to date, but since that design the current design is probably about 20 years old, where we haven't had to tweak anything.
Wow.
Because power hasn't changed until we change what power is.
You don't have to worry about it.
It doesn't work, So that's one thing, is that there's consistency. So we sell the same product. We've changed a few things over the years. Like we have one unit, we added USB power supply.
Right. Oh,
so that you can go directly into a USB power supply as part of the brick itself.
Nice.
You don't have to have a bunch of little power adapters and taking up space. And
that's cool.
And that has its own, it's protected by our technology too. So it's a protected one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one new thing. And, I guess also, because we're small, we're more agile, we can spend time talking to you. We're not a call center. If you call here, you can talk to a person.
Right. That's great.
We don't oversell it. I think that's also, we've never made promises. Like, I'm not going to say it stops lightning. Mm-hmm. Like, nothing's going to stop a lightning bolt.
Right.
I'm not going to do that kind of stuff. There's a lot of, like in the AV side of it, there's a lot of snake oil.
Sure.
A lot of, claims that I, as a chemist, go, wait, no.
Mm-hmm.
Stop saying that. That's not real,
So, all right. Now, any business philosophies that have carried on from Zero Surge's inception to now, and that it sounds like the invention itself, or the
there's that.
Itself.
But the one philosophy, I guess, like Rudy's always been about, and I alluded to it. We don't embellish what we're doing. We have physics on our side, so we don't have to market. We don't have to use hyperbole. We don't have to say we're the best, we're the number one, and we actually have physics that back up what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So, and Rudy, trained me as the owner and say, look, you got to make sure, because we do get inspected by Intertech, which inspects us for safety, that we're making a safe product. That's a number one goal.
Of course.
And also we don't, like, there are some things, even like, because the way the electric code is, sometimes the electric code in this country is a little bureaucratic. It may seem arbitrary to people, like, how come I can't do this with it?
Uh-huh.
Why can't I run an extension cord out my window?
Okay.
I just need to power I want to have, a party outside.
Right.
And I want to run it through my window.
Why
so I don't have it
because
because
I was thinking about doing that this summer.
Know all the you can't know all the grill. Yeah, you just can't know all the situations. But there's that's how a cord can get broken.
Okay.
You're running it around a corner.
Yeah.
Somebody closes a window.
Yeah.
forgets it's there. It's out in the sun. It may not be an outdoor rated plug.
Right.
It may be too long.
Okay.
Because it may have too much resistance. The longer extension cord, the thicker it should be, or else it gets hot.
Okay.
And especially if you're pulling a lot of power. You're trying to run a whole party outside with one cord. You're going to run 15 amps. It's going to literally get hot.
Yes. That's funny. I have a story about that. When I was in high school, I was in this band, and we were playing in some park, and there were very few outlets available.
Sure.
And so I think we ran the whole band and our PA system and all our amps like from one plug.
Oh, yeah.
Probably a very scary, scary situation. And we sounded great though.
Yeah,
well, it may not blew up. It might have been more interesting.
Because a big amp will only take like 500 watts, maybe.
Yeah, but we had the bass, the keyboards, drums. I mean, the other guitar. I don't know.
Yeah, so that
for the grace of God.
Yeah, probably when you unplugged it, it was like, ow.
Probably, I can't remember. I mean, I didn't unplug it.
Or you probably waited, a few minutes before you unplugged it.
Something like that. Yeah, but I remember running from one line.
But like that's a perfect example of like somebody says, well, yeah, from a physics standpoint, you could run a cord through a window. It doesn't. Right. The laws of physics aren't violated for that. Right. But there are, and it's just a safety thing. It's like that's why you don't jaywalk, because there's hey, there's no cars coming. I could cross the street. Well, I can't tell you to do that because I'm the cop. I have to tell you to go in the crosswalk.
Yeah.
So that's Don and I are very big on that. As far as telling people, like, look, you can do what you want, but the only person you have to answer to is your insurance company.
Yeah.
Really? I mean, if you have a fire or somebody gets hurt, you're going to be answering to an insurance company.
There you go. All right.
And do you want to hurt anybody? I mean, there are solutions. Usually
it's a good sales pitch. We don't hurt people.
Yeah,
I mean, use our product because you won't get hurt.
Yeah, I mean that's basically what we're.
Yeah.
That's one of our philosophies. Is just it's be honest with what we're doing. Don't overpromise and try to give more information. Give as much information as somebody can handle.
Right. All right, that's wonderful. And so now, company's growth.
Yeah.
It's been around for decades.
Yeah.
Where are you today, and where do you see yourself going? Do you have a plan? Is it in the works? What's
well, we've tried a few.
Years?
Yeah, we've tried a few strategies. Like when I took over, the first few years was more about trying to figure out where our opportunities were, and then like 16. So once the first set of tariffs happened, that kind of screwed the economy a little bit. People were afraid. It affects us directly because, honestly, our products are coming from overseas at some point.
Oh, really?
Because copper is not. Nobody makes copper wire. Good copper wire in the U.S. anymore. We ship that dirty job to China basically, so they could deal with the environmental issues of that. But, but what it did was it raised the costs of all the base materials, because even if it's made in the U.S., a U.S. manufacturer says, "Hey, I can now raise my price to the new tariff level," and that caused a lot of imbalance. And
the recent tariffs are the ones back in
the very first ones did the first
that
level.
Was in 2016?
2016 or 17, say, because he took over in 17, right? So 17, 18-ish. And then, so we were kind of adjusting to that, because people were, I think there was the beginning, whether it was going to be a recession or not. I think in our world, maybe there was a little bit where people were putting off projects because of the uncertainty. Right. So that was hurting us. And then pandemic. So then pandemic initially scared me, because obviously what are we going to do? Right. And then what happened was when everybody went to home, a lot of people were working in ungrounded homes, and they bring their surge protectors from work, and they don't work. So then we started getting actually a lot of business where people were calling.
Wow. Because
of that. And then what happened too is the fast food industry, when they started realizing, hey, to stay alive, Wendy's has to have a good drive-through. Right. So they stopped using those plastic backlit menu boards. They had to, crank in the morning from breakfast to lunch. Remember like McDonald's used to have it was like,
they would change it. Yeah. To change the menus. Yeah.
Change the menus. And so
and now
they realized, hey, if we put flat screen TVs, we can have dynamic content. You can have the prices on there. You can have feedback so the customer knows what you're asking for.
Different ads.
And you could add different things. You have specials. And so the company that started getting into that market found us, because the way I found Chuck the first time was he was showing off a drive-through menu on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
And when I would see somebody like that, I would be like, "Hey, how are you protecting that lovely thing?" You know?
Nice. Okay.
And he 20 minutes later said, "What's your phone number?"
Yeah.
And so he was doing them for, I think they were in Long John Silver's.
Okay.
And they were having a lot of failures with the menu boards. And he was just using a simple surge protector. And he's like, "There's got to be a better way."
Wow.
So we ended up with them because a lot of them were already done. We have a hardwired product of our guts that we put in a safety, like a NEMA box,
Mm-hmm.
these gray, like construction boxes you see, so they can be retrofitted.
Right. But I'm wondering, it sounds like there's no one that, you have a patented technology, I'm assuming. So,
yeah. So the patent has run out. So that's,
okay.
Because it's 20 years.
Yeah.
Right. But Rudy did put another company in business called Surgex. Okay. So they were mostly in this audio world.
Mm-hmm.
And he helped them, by basically selling them our design. I think in the end, he wanted to have at least another company that was selling it. So we weren't like this weird, unique unicorn
Mm-hmm.
company.
Mm-hmm.
And there's plenty of customers. We've, like, even to this day, we don't run into each other a lot. Like, there's nobody who says, "Hey," other than the audiophiles. They're the only group that knows both companies because of how much they advertise in that
Mm-hmm.
industry. And then they got bought out by like $1 billion company. So they're owned by Amatec now.
Okay.
So they, and they do other things besides surge protection. So they have a lot of other products. So, and they honestly don't even know the history of their own company. I ran into some of them a couple of years ago to show, and I had to explain them their own company history.
Wow. And
because all the people were, all of their founders were gone.
Yeah.
They've been bought and sold a couple times at that point, that kind of thing. So you lose that company history.
Yeah.
You lose, like, kind of what we were saying before, like what our philosophies, like you
Mm-hmm.
lose that. And I could see a little bit of that in how they're selling their product versus us.
Mm.
Like some of the things that, you could see the divergence of philosophies. Not that it's bad or good, but just you could see how they lost what their core message was.
Yeah.
And they're trying to reach this other message that I think they're trying to play against the competition instead of say, "No, we're unique."
Right.
They don't play up enough their uniqueness. I think they could.
Okay.
More than
you do, but
I think we do.
But so, other than that company, is there any other competition you really are looking at, or
not really? I mean, we compete against the higher cost MOV type surge protectors.
right? But at the same time, it's like, hey, this is apples and oranges.
Yeah.
When you get in front of a customer.
So it's more just we're competing against the lack of information.
Right. Interesting.
Really, is our biggest competition is
people
not knowing about electricity.
Yeah. Well,
was really what it comes down
to. This has taught me a lot. And so in 5 years, what's the plan? What do you see yourself? What business?
Well, I think
proposals?
I think we've sort of been looking at other companies as far as potential partnerships, especially with the OEM stuff that we're doing to see if there's any. I've always wondered if there's a way we could incorporate a battery backup system, but philosophically, it doesn't make sense because any battery system is going to wear out.
Yeah,
because it's physics, right? There's entropy. Batteries all die, no matter what. Lithium batteries, lead batteries, they're all going to die. So our product doesn't. So why would you have one thing that's never going to wear out mixed with something that is? So I mean, right now you could just put ours ahead of theirs, and then it works.
Okay.
So maybe there's some packaging deal, or maybe a module that you could snap ours into, maybe, or in and out of when you change your battery. But there's that kind of thing maybe as a potential. But it's what we've been doing lately is just growing our we call our VARs, our value added resellers.
Okay.
So whether they're installers or management companies or something like that. So I think that's honestly doing less on the retail side.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because it's just harder for you spend more dollars to try to get a sale for retail.
Yeah.
And you're never going to get a repeat once you buy. Like I said, so,
sure, because it lasts forever.
So let the VARs do the work of getting the retail customers.
Okay.
They know the customers.
Right.
We have one that does like luxury yachts and things.
Wow.
And big homes and down in Florida and like Hawaii, even they have a place and stuff like that. So it's like, let them do all that work because they have the trusted relationships.
Gotcha.
And we don't have to rebuild the relationship.
Sure.
Leverage that.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, the biggest growth we see. And then also some of the OEM stuff that is some of it's hitting, some of it we have some unique applications that customers have, and they're
okay. OEM
meaning like our guts is inside their product.
Oh, right, exactly. Okay, so they're using your product, but not the thing you sell to.
Right, they don't like the end user doesn't even.
What
know
does
that
OEM stand for?
Original Equipment Manufacturer.
Gotcha. Okay, and that's
That's a common acronym for like any industry.
Okay,
basically,
and that
basically
goes to the drive-through kind of application, or
that one does because right now it does. It used to be that either they would use a plug-in product or some hardwired product. But now that he's evolved and incorporating it ahead of time, it can be done as the OEM.
Okay.
So it's better for us because it's less things. We don't have to create a box with the extra outlets and all that stuff. It's all hardwired. He does all the wiring, so it makes it easier for us. Because again, you're probably gonna ask about what keeps me up at night. So that's
yes. My last question. You read my mind.
So
yes, what does keep you up at night?
So part of our problem is two things is deciding how much to purchase, because some of our products are custom because we are unique. The one problem is that we also have to have really good relationships with certain suppliers that create these custom parts. Their costs are going up because of, especially this year now, because of the new tariffs. Already, the one told me already that she's adding another 10% to our. She's actually splitting and she's splitting the tariff with us.
Wow.
And still we're going up 10%.
Yeah. Jeez.
Because it's really 25% or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so it's, that is a challenge. It's just the uncertainty, how much this uncertainty of the current situation, politically and otherwise, like how that's going to affect all these long-term projects.
Okay. How
people are going to spend their money, those kind of things. Right. And then also for us, it's just making sure that we have enough people that can do the work. It's, we have good people here, but it's hard, sometimes it's figuring out when do you add another person to the mix, right? Because there's a certain level where bringing another person, yes, it makes it easier, but then it makes it harder in other ways. Like, logistics, we're not in a huge facility, having another person, having, dividing up the work, and changing people's routines and things like that is always a challenge. So that always kind of, for me, because I try not to be a micromanager. I'm just there to help solve problems most of the time. So if you let people have these little domains of their own, like, their own power or whatever,
area of expertise,
expertise, it's like, okay, now I'm bringing another person. So I'm trying to help you not have to work as hard. But then it's like, but they like what they're doing. So it's like, you kind of have to, okay, you like to do X, Y, and Z. I'll take Z away from you because I can give that to somebody else who doesn't know as much. Okay. But then that person may like to do Z. So it's like those kind of things. And I never had to do that before. So as a manager, I never had that kind of problem. Like I've never managed growth before because I've always had a stable, and it's tempting to be happy with the stable.
Right, sure.
Like we're all making some money, we're all doing some stuff, and we all are busy enough. But it's like, do you want to risk? How much energy do you want to put in? Because you have to put in at least energy to do that. So, can I rally everybody to have that same energy to move another level, or and then what if we outgrow this place? How do you determine what to do next?
Right. So, are you thinking about that kind of growth, or
I've always thought about it, like and I have friends that run other bigger businesses, so I always. First thing I was at, like, how did you decide to add this wing to your building?
Sure.
Yeah. What was the breaking point? What was the thing that made you say, okay, it's worth the risk? I've looked at, we've self-financed all our purchasing at this point. And, I looked into just when I was like, all right, I'm finally convinced that, banks do good for this kind of thing, that they're helping you buy things and spreading out those costs. Then the interest rates went up, right? Last 2 years. So it's like, all right. I picked the wrong time to decide to want to work with the banks. So it's like, even they were like, sorry, but the interest rates, they used to be 4%. Now they're 8%.
Yes. You need a surge protector for that.
So it's like, just when you think, you're willing to do something, it's like that happens. So,
sure. Well, that's
always an issue too.
Managing,
from the high end. But,
all right.
But
things are going, now that interest rates might be kind of cooling down a little bit, do you think you might?
I don't know. It really depends. I think what helps too, because it's a pet peeve as a business owner, is how big corporations don't want to pay their bills on time.
Really?
There's a huge trend, especially in manufacturing, where a big company comes in, they want to buy, hey, great, you want to buy $30,000 worth of surge protectors, great.
Right.
Oh, but we want to pay you in 90 days. That's a loan.
Yeah.
That's not a payment, that's a loan. You want me to give you an interest-free loan for 90
days. Right.
And we had one customer that was, they decided that's what they wanted, because we had another company that we're selling to. They were paying in their 30 days. Things were fine. Mm-hmm. They got bought out by this bigger company who was like, guess what? Now 90 day. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So I finally said no.
Good for you.
I said cash up front.
Wow.
No 30 days anymore. If you're going to play that, I'll play the opposite.
Right.
I knew in the end their customer needed the product. So you leverage, I don't think enough business owners leverage their reputation, their the need that the customers had, whatever their brand cachet,
right?
To say, hey, I'm not putting them with that, right.
Although you're the little guy, so that's why
I actually
sometimes it's a risk.
I found the CFO of this; it's $1 billion company, and found the guy's name on LinkedIn. I figured his email address is similar to how his employees are,
right? So
I emailed him. I got a response in like half an hour.
Wow!
He said he sent an email to some other woman and said, "Hey, pay them." Send him a wire transfer.
Good for you. All right, there you go.
And I had another one recently where they were late paying. And I'm like, look, if you're late, I'm not going to sell you a new product. You got to stop this. And luckily he was a new CFO for them, and it was a little bit smaller company, but they're bigger than us still. And he understood, and he was like, all right, we'll do it this way. You tell me that you shipped it, I'll pay you.
Okay. That's
so
fair.
It was like, a few days later, which is fine.
That's fair. All right, well, good for you.
Because,
you see, that's not a bad thing.
Because we're using that money to buy product to make more product. Like, we don't want to have to go to a bank to cover your payment to us.
Yeah, because now you're paying.
So why do I have to pay 8% interest to cover you? And the thing with the $1 billion company is, they're publicly traded. Yeah, you can go on their balance sheet. They had $500 million in cash on their balance. Like, you have $500 million, you can't pay $30,000.
Why are they doing it? Just to try to push.
They're doing
it
because they can. They're doing it because they can. I mean, they want whatever. I believe in the end it comes down to tax policy that's driving companies to create cash.
Oh, okay, all right.
I think it ends up being some kind of cash. I'm sure if you trace the roots of it, eventually it's because the only way they can grow. There's two things: either it's for tax policy reasons, or because the only way they can grow is to buy other companies. And you can't buy companies if you don't have cash.
Right. Oh.
And because we've had more mergers, I looked it up. We had more mergers in the last 30 years than the previous 200 in this country.
I never knew that.
More mergers.
Okay.
It's because something's driving that. Because everybody's trying to, they want their stock price to be up. The only way you can raise your, you reach a peak in productivity.
Right.
When we have, software that does everything. We have automated equipment. We have hardly any employees. These big plants. My wife worked at a plant where they had 5 people ran this entire product line.
Wow.
And you go, wait a minute, they sell this product around the world, and 5 people run it.
So some efficiencies on their part, for sure.
Because it's just millions of dollars of equipment. So they spend it. They need the money for that, I guess.
Maybe.
But
Yeah, it's good for you to kind of Robin Hood that thing back and have those.
I was telling other little companies, use your leverage because they,
you definitely have it because you have a unique, novel product that no one else can sell them, and it lasts forever. Yeah, they're going to want to keep doing business.
Yeah, and if you're going to be an ongoing business with me anyway, you're going to end up rotating through. I mean, that's their argument is like, hey, well, we start paying you 90 days, but order every month. Eventually, you get paid every month. But it's like, but you're going to stretch that 90 to 95. When Sally's out from the accounting for a week, then that pushes another. We've had that issue too. We're like, oh, well, this person has to get approval, and then this person, and they don't start working on it till the 30 days.
Yeah, not cool.
They don't understand, like, Deb, or, that does the accounts receivable and manages the office, and she keeps, on them to say, hey, it's the 30 days is when it's due, not when you start deciding to pay.
Right. All right. Well, listen, you might have to give me a call at some point to start knocking some heads, right?
Yeah. Well,
not quite yet, but that's all right. So it's been such a pleasure to speak with you. Wow, yeah, we've gone over time. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry to take all of your time. You've
That's
been
right.
so generous to give your time, and what a pleasure to talk to you about Zero Surge. Now, can you tell us how we can reach you or what trade shows you'll be at next?
Okay, so our website is zerosearch.com,
Okay.
all spelled out. We have a link to our factory store if you want to buy direct. Our plugins we sell direct because we don't have to worry about safety. For the hardwired stuff and the OEM stuff, contact us. Our email is info@zerosearch.com.
Okay, great.
Donna and I or Deb will get it.
Right. Zero Surge as in ZERO search.
Yes,
right?
SURGE.com. And, we'll answer that. And that's the other way. And our website, we just launched a new website 2 weeks ago. So we kind of made it a little bit easier to navigate, and we added a bunch of videos.
Love the videos. I looked at them myself. Very cool. Thank you so much for a terrific conversation. And I hope everyone checks out Zero Surge. This has been Jim Minadeo, and the president and owner of Zero Surge in Frenchtown, New Jersey. And I am Paul Salvatoriello, your host from OGC Solutions, which powers the Think Factory podcast. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, Paul.